Do you have a book in you just dying to get out? Of course you do. And we're going to be talking about that right after this. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Patton, your host. And joining us today is an amazing book coach and lifelong word magician. I just love that way of describing her. She has a passion for partnering with talented authors to take their books to the next level. So we're going to be talking to her about all sorts of things that have to do with publishing your book, writing your book. She's way more than just an editor. She has experience with self-publishing and with publishers, which is pretty unique, I think. So with that, welcome to the show, Megan Close Zavala. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm awesome. So,
wonderful.
What is your favorite book that you have read that you have not written or edited?
Well, that is very, very tough to answer, but because I love so many books for so many different reasons. But I always say my favorite book of all time is The Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy. It was the first book that really, I am a lifelong reader, but it was the first book that really got me thinking about language and, just the way he described things. And, you could really see the Spanish moss hanging from the trees and feel the, humidity of, the air in the, in South Carolina and all that. And it was a beautiful story too. So
that reminds me of something that I read once, which is these crazy people that are looking at these little squiggles on pieces of paper and hallucinating.
Yes.
My favorite book, I'm the same way. I have lots of books I could say is my favorite, but as you were talking, the one that popped in my head was called The Lord of Light, and it was a science fiction / fantasy book by Roger Zelazny. And I read it when I was 10, 12, 13, in around there. And the way he wrote the book was all the chapters were chronologically out of order. So the hero so he's about to fall off of a cliff, and the next chapter he's a child, or this sort of thing, right?
My gosh, yeah.
So the first time I read it, I just thought, wow, like this is like, because the imagery, the way he wrote, the beauty of the words, I loved it, and I love science fiction, but I didn't understand the story at all. And then I read it another time a couple of years later, and another time a couple of years later, and finally I kind of understood the story, but it still didn't quite make sense because of this time shift thing. And of course I bought it, lost it, lost it. And then I bought a secondhand book, and whoever had it before, at the end of every chapter wrote, next chapter is not number 3, it's number 14.
My gosh.
So we figured out the whole thing.
Yes.
And so I actually then read it chronologically, and it was like, oh, wow. So, but that's the beauty of books,
that
right?
Sounds like a very cool book.
Yeah. They transport us to different places and times and experiences.
Yes, and obviously I knew someone had written the words on the page that were made into a book that I was then reading, and I liked writing stories myself at that point, but it was just really, it was the first book that really, helped me wrap my head around the idea of what an author is, as opposed to just the, someone typing words on a paper. It's really all of the artistry and craft that comes with it. And then it's so much more than just, an act.
Right. Cool. So do you focus, just talking a little bit about, being an author coach and a word magician, do you focus more on nonfiction or on fiction, or just doesn't matter? It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is I work with both fiction and nonfiction authors. And, really comes in fits and starts. A lot of my background is in nonfiction, so I definitely have probably the most experience doing that, but I've worked with lots of fiction authors too. And it's nice to be able to do both because they, yes, they're all connected by storytelling and making sure your message is shared with your readers and understanding your audience and all concepts like that. But they each present their own unique challenges, so it's kind of fun to bounce from one to the next and really get to dive into that, both worlds.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a real mistake for starting out authors, and I actually probably experience ones too if they think this for some reason,
Hmm.
that whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it's all storytelling.
Hmm.
And I recently bought a bought a book, Don't Say No or something like. Anyway, it was a note how to negotiate book, but it was by a fellow who had with I think he was with the FBI, and so when they had hostage taking, they sent him,
Hmm.
right. So he had
Oh
to
yeah.
negotiate. He wasn't negotiating for a good deal. I guess he was, but
Sure.
it wasn't for
Yes.
10% off. He was negotiating for someone's life, and
Yeah.
so. But I came into the book. It was actually an audiobook with the
Uh-huh.
expectation of step one, step two, step three.
Yes.
And he's talking about, being in Uganda and these guerrillas having some American diplomats and having to get on the phone with the mosquitoes buzzing around. I
Yes.
thought, what does it have to do with negotiations? And of course, it had everything to do with negotiations, right? Because it was always
Yeah.
a lesson in all the negotiations. But I was
Oh,
just,
absolutely. And I tell so many of my nonfiction clients because, they come in and they've got expertise, whatever they're writing about, if it's business, they've been in the business world for, a few decades, but they often want to come in and just do those bullet points, like step one, do this, step two, do that. But, and then I have to kind of help them, get more comfortable with the writing aspect of it, the storytelling aspect of it, where you have important information to share with readers, but you want them to be able to connect emotionally. Like, so even if it is a business book, you still want them to see how they can apply it in their own lives, and kind of interact with the material. And so, and it's always helpful when you have not just their viewpoint, but also here's another example of how this principle was successfully carried out, because you never know what is going to connect with readers.
so do you have a preference? Like, what is your favorite? Working with someone who says, I have a book, I've never written a book before, I don't know what to do, help me. Or someone who said, I'm on my 15th book and I want you to help me with my 15th book.
Um, that's a good question. I mean, there are definite pros and cons for both of those, but I think um, my favorite type of author to work with is someone who's willing to learn. Because I can either person, I can sit there and I can say, okay, these are the 12 things you need to do to make your book as powerful as possible. It's great as it is, but here's what you need to do. And
Right.
if they don't do it, you know,
It doesn't matter if
it's
it's their first or their 100th book, does it?
right. And I've worked with people both ways, where it's like, well, I've written 15 books before. Why would I need to change the same thing I'm doing? And then the other people, so yeah. So it's really great when I have teachable clients, where, because at the end of the day, I can't make them listen to me, you know?
We
So
really
yeah.
can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. And
No,
that's
and yes, and it's one of those things too. I mean, it's like so many of the books that are out there. I mean, if you want to lose weight, you need to eat less and exercise more, but it's just, which book is going to be the one that you're going to finally listen to, which author is going to connect with you. And so I always feel really fortunate and very happy when I have the client that's like, okay, yes, so I know I've read 17 books on writing, and I know I need to do these things, but now after talking to you and working through it with my own manuscript, I'm going to do it, you know.
Nice. Yeah, it's always that actually you brought up one question that you brought up the answer to one question that I hear from time to time when I'm talking to my friends and they don't want to write a book, or they do want to write a book but they're afraid to write it because one of their objections is, well, there's 35 books on this topic. And I know that there's many times when I've heard the same thing over and over and over again from different people, like my family, my friends, and everything else. But then it was when that single person over there said it to me
Yes.
that it clicked. The other times it was like, I don't understand what you're talking about, right?
Yes,
So,
and one of the things that I work with my clients a lot is, you know, mindset issues they have. Like, why haven't they written the book? Why are they having problems writing the book, or, you know, really struggling to follow those next steps and getting it published? And a lot of it is this scarcity mindset where, you know, there are millions of books published a year. Who's going to notice mine? You know, there are millions of mystery novels out there already. You know, how is my story going to be different enough to stand out? And, you know, and you want to stand out and be unique, but it really comes down to having, you know, understanding your audience and having a quality product, and, you know, knowing that you will connect with someone.
yeah. And so one of the things that, I mean, there are people that write one book, but I mentioned as I was growing up, I liked the science fiction stuff, and those guys never wrote one book.
No.
Sometimes they wrote a series of books, or they wrote a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of unrelated books, or they wrote short stories and all that sort of stuff. And so that, you know, one of the questions that that I'm curious about is, like, when someone comes to you and says, well, I've got this idea for a book, and whether it's nonfiction, fiction, doesn't matter. Do you plant seeds of book number 2, 3, 4, or do you just focus on that one book?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I talk to all of my clients about, whether, you know, regardless of what type of book they're writing, is, you know, what are your goals for this book? Um, and so it's easier for both of us then, once we've kind of talked that out, and is to figure out, you know, how big this project can be. You know, is this just, I have this, you know, one story I want to tell, or is this, okay, so I have this story, but what if we do this and that and that, and then, you know, then we can have a trilogy or a series, or, you know, sequels, prequels, whatever.
Yeah,
So,
are we creating our own little universe, or are we just telling a story here, right?
and, you know, and some people, you know, it's tough because they are picturing it as, you know, this giant series, but in talking about it, you know, I have to help them see sometimes that, okay, you have a really great book here, but maybe it will be its, you know, it will be its at its best if we put it all in one, and, you know,
Right,
not
right.
try and put a little in each. And, you know,
Oh,
and that could be
that bug.
disappointing. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's my pet peeve when I read a really, really good book and the author
Hmm.
goes, oh, people bought my book, I'm going to write a sequel. And the sequel is terrible because all the good stuff was in the first book and they
Yes.
don't have any
Yes.
more to say, right? Like some people, they have lots more to
Absolutely.
say. And some they're, that's it, I'm done, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and then, you know, you can, that doesn't mean, you know, if you just write this one book featuring these characters, that you can't write any other books ever. It's just, you know,
Right.
some things that you might take out of this book in the editing process, you can use in a later book, just in a different context. So it's not, you know, so again, it, you know, it kind of ties into a little bit of the scarcity thing, where you just have this, like, you know, people get kind of frozen by fear when it comes to this, and you know, and it's just helping them pass the thought processes, where it's like, no, just let's focus on making this as good as it can, and we can have long-term goals, but, you know, you could have a series planned out for the rest of your life, but if your first one isn't any good, no one's gonna care about the second and third and fourth.
Right. And that actually is how it happens in TV all the time, right? Like
Oh
I'll
yeah.
be reading an article about some producer or the writers for some show when they said, we put everything we had into this, movie or TV series season because
Hmm.
we didn't know if we'd get a chance to do a sequel or do season 2 or anything else. So
Yes.
it's you just can't. It's kind of like, in sports, if it's the final game of the final series for the championship, you can't be saying, well, I'm going to rest up this period because,
Right.
tomorrow there's no tomorrow. So
No,
you
no,
have to
this is your shot.
put it all out there. That's right. Your shot. That's a
Exactly.
good way of putting it.
Yes.
Awesome. So we have these super stacks coming out for Black Friday, and this is where a number of experts put together a bunch of products. We bundle it in together, and then sell it at a ridiculously low price for the value that's in there. And your contribution is the Author Power Pack. So tell us a
Yes.
little bit about it.
Yeah, so the Author Power Pack is a collection of 4, I call them mini trainings, for authors. And, I combined them together because I felt like it was a quick and easy way for people to, make their writing dreams happen and, get their books published now. And so the 4 trainings that are included, are, perfecting your pitch, which talks about, just like it says, pitching yourself and your book, because you never know what opportunities come up. You can have the traditional publishing route where you're pitching yourself to agents and editors, or if you're doing self or traditional publishing, you're pitching yourself to readers. So you really want to get very clear about what your book is about, what you're bringing to the table as an author, how to get people excited about you and your book, and things like that. I have What Even Good Writers Do Badly, which is based on lectures I have done across the country at different writing conferences, where I'm really talking about craft and business principles that really authors might not be aware of or might need a little bit of a reminder about, to really get themselves in the spot they need to be in to make their book and their writing career successful. And then for nonfiction authors, I have a training on secrets of writing a book proposal. And the book proposal, for those who aren't familiar, is basically like a sales plan for your nonfiction book. And that is what you will need to send to literary agents, and which they would then send on to editors at publishing houses, which really outlines what your book is about, why you're the one to write it, and who is going to be interested in reading it. And so that's actually what people want to see before they see the manuscript itself. So you want to make sure you have a good proposal in place, so that you can maximize your book's chances of success. And then the final training is building your killer author platform. And marketing is usually, I would say 99.9% of the time, not my author clients' favorite thing to do, which I understand. But fortunately, it's part of the world now. So, kind of like I talked about when I was describing perfecting your pitch, it's really important to get into the mindset of, your book is a product that you are selling to the world. And even though it's your baby and you've spent hours crafting the right words and coming up with amazing characters and all of those great artistic things, you really want to make sure you get your book into the hands of readers. So just getting comfortable with that ideas for how to start yourself off, how to make yourself attractive to for media opportunities and things like that. So the 4 trainings are basically just a good roadmap for getting yourself from the editing process, through the editing process, and then through the publishing process as well.
The courses sound like must-have courses if you're really serious about being an author, for sure. And it brought up 2 questions for me, and I wrote
Okay,
them
great.
down so because I've got a very good memory, but very, very short. And the first one was you talked about a literary agent. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so let's pretend I'm thinking about this book. It's a science fiction book, like my hero Roger Zelazny wrote,
Yes.
and I come and I see you, and I'm talking to you about it. And what, how should I, what process would I go through to decide if I need a literary agent, or should I have a literary agent? Megan, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean that would be a conversation I would have with you. I would have with you because you would really have to decide if you wanted to do the traditional publishing route or if you were okay with self-publishing. And initially when self-publishing came out, it was, I don't want to say not a respectable choice, but it was kind of not as well regarded as it is today. And
There
so
were
there's so
there were a
many.
lot of people who maybe weren't very good authors who were putting out
And
books
I
that
mean, there
wouldn't have
still
made it
are, to be
otherwise.
honest. But yes, but it was a lot of the, oh, you can tell this was self-published type
Right, right.
situations. But there's so many more opportunities for people now. And then when you're comfortable with the idea of marketing yourself and you being in charge of getting yourself up the lists on Amazon and things like that, self-publishing is fine. And but if you are wanting to go the traditional publishing route and hoping to have more of a partner with you in the process, um, and and working, having the kind of extra zing of having a publishing imprint on the back of your book, traditional publishing would be the way to go. And before any publishing house would consider your manuscript, it would need to be pitched to them by a literary agent. And a literary agent is someone that will basically go out and hustle on your behalf, because they have the contacts and they know the people in the industry and they know, okay, Joe Schmo at HarperCollins is looking for science fiction books like Zelazny, in the vein of Zelazny. And so they're going to say, okay, so Scott, I'm going to be pitching you to them and these people, and so they will, yes, yay. And so, yeah, so that would be when you would have your agent, and the agent would be doing that, and then hopefully getting you a deal, and then would be the liaison with the publisher as well during the editing process.
Very cool. And through answering that question, you pretty much answered my second one, which was about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And
Hmm.
it kind of really depends. And I mean, I know people that have self-published and their books are awesome. And I know people that have gone through the main imprints and their books are awesome. So, um, is there anything that you would look for in terms of someone making that decision? I mean, one of the things that you did say was, are you comfortable marketing yourself? Are you comfortable, doing all of that work yourself? And if you go the publishing route, does someone do a lot of that marketing for you, or
Well,
so what are some of the
the
differences? Would be the question.
yeah, so the good and bad news is that, um, when you are working with a traditional publisher, they have a lot of resources at their disposal. They've done this all before, um, but they do, often kind of think of their authors as, one size fits all mold. So they're like, okay, we paid this advance, we're going to do these things, we've done our job. And so, they are not necessarily, the publisher's never going to be responsible for making you a best-selling author. I'll put it that way. You still are going to be as the author, are going to be have to be out there hustling and building up your mailing list and reaching out to people and doing guest blogs and getting yourself on Goodreads and doing all of those things. So you do get some help, and it does help to be on the Simon and Schuster list versus the Joe's Publishing House list. But yes, so either way, as an author, if you want to be successful, you are going to be doing some marketing. and outreach. And, you can't just say, okay, I've written the book, go out and be successful. Yes.
Right.
And,
And
and some people, and it really comes down to people's goals too. I mean,
mhm,
if, I've worked with, when I worked for some self-publishing companies, some people were writing books that were collections of their grandma's recipes. And that's okay. Like, they weren't looking to become the next, Emerald Lagasse or whatever. They were just wanted to have this book, and that was fine with them. But then I've worked with clients that, wanted to become these bestsellers, but weren't understanding that, okay, well, they just kind of felt like they were fighting the man, and I'm going to self-publish. And then it was, well, you know, you still have to get out there.
right, and still got to get out there. That's something I think everybody should write down. Like one of my friends calls it a writer downer. You still have to get out there. As you were talking, I was thinking of the late night talk shows, right? They always have, some movie star on, and they talk about their movie, and that they all just do this route, right? But they get out there, they get in front of a bunch of people who have large audiences, they share a bit about their movie, they show a little clip, and away you go. So, if multi-billion-dollar blockbusters can, get out there,
Yes.
you with your book get out there too, right?
Well, yeah. When I always tell my authors, just be an informed consumer, and that's whatever you do. But there are publishing houses, like no one can make you a New York Times bestseller. Like, the only way you can guarantee bestseller status is to buy thousands of copies of your book, and then that will skyrocket the book sales, and then okay, there you go. So there's still publishing companies that'll say, make these big claims, and you'll invest all this money, and then oops, it didn't get you anywhere. But I am always trying to encourage authors, whether it's working with me or anybody else, it's really good to have a partner with you to help you navigate the process. Because it's just, editors and coaches can answer a lot of questions that you might be stumped about, and can help you with mindset and figuring out tweaks you can do and different ways you can think about things, so that you can get more comfortable with the things that you're not comfortable about. Because I even have, I've judged writing contests, and some of the self-published authors, they're like, I'm not going to invest in a book cover. And you just think, okay, sure, you've written this book, that's the hard part. But it's like I've read some beautifully written books, but they have the most awful covers. And, even if it's totally unfair, no one is going to pick this book up because this cover looks so awful.
Right.
And I just want to say, no,
True.
please, go do a bake sale, come up with a couple $1,000s, get a great cover, and your chances are gonna skyrocket for success.
That's right. I mean, when you're walking in the bookstore, you're judging everything by its cover. Oh, that looks interesting.
Yes.
And that looks interesting. And if it's just blah and ugly, it's not going to happen.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. People do judge a book by its cover. That's just how it is.
That's right. Get over it.
Yes.
It's like
yes.
Your mom told you to finish eating your meal, and books are judged by their cover. That's the way life is.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
But their peas are cold, Mom. So, Megan, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I think you've just brought
absolutely.
a ton of amazing information for everybody. And what I try to do, if I remember, is I have a segment I call Today's Tip. So it's going to play for 10 seconds. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds to figure out what tip you'd like to leave everybody with before we sign off today. So coming next is Today's Tip. And today's tip from Megan is...
Today's tip is never forget who you're writing for. I think that's something really good for authors to keep in mind, because no matter what type of book you're writing, yes, it's a cathartic process for you, and it's fun, and you get to experience the joy that comes with using your gifts and being creative. But you want to stay true to your readers. So if you're writing if you're writing a nonfiction book, you want to really give some thought about who your target audience is. Are you talking to, writing a business book for CEOs? Or are you writing a business book for business newbies? Are you writing a parenting book for mothers or fathers? And then when it comes to fiction writing, you want to think about books that are like yours. Where would your book fall in on the Barnes & Noble shelf? What are those authors doing? Who are they connecting with? And just really give some thought to that, because if you can make a happy reader, you're going to sell a book, and you're going to have a dedicated follower for the length of your writing career.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful tip, Megan. Thank you very much. So just want to remind everybody, the Power Pack is part of the Super Stack coming out for Black Friday week and a couple of days afterwards. In the description is a link to the Super Stack, and I really highly recommend that you get it and connect with Megan. And so, Megan, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, everybody,
thank you
for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.